You guys know that TV show where, you could call a friend when you can't get something right? Sometimes having friends in the plant community is kind of like that TV show. Hi everyone, it's Melissa, your plantita abogada here at Tasteful Nodes, coming to you today with a propagation video. Well, not so much a propagation video in that we're going to be propagating things, because we're not. Some of them have already been propagated, but a propagation video in which I describe 5 of my favorite ways to propagate plants. Before I get started, let's just go through our disclaimers really quick. 1, KKB tayo, kanya-kanyang bayad, meaning for our Western friends, we each pay our own way. Anything you see here, definitely attractive, would not pay my rent money for it, so I hope you don't either. Number 2, I'm not an expert, and I won't claim to be an expert when it comes to plants. I'm an attorney by profession, so anything I say that is factual, I'll go ahead and put a source at the bottom of the screen, as well as in the description box down below, in case you need to use any information I give you as citations in a scholarly piece of work. And then 3rd, while it is nice to find experts in your area who have these same plants, I don't know if it's actually necessary, just because a lot of these methods are really basic. So with that, let me jump into it. So today's episode is about the 5 easiest ways to propagate plants. And this episode came about because I have this gorgeous Monstera albo, Monstera deliciosa white form, in my greenhouse. And I want to bring it in here. I want to put it right along that wall right there. It's tall. It's great. My problem is it also rooted to the ground. So it went sideways, and then the aerial roots hit the ground, and then it decided to go upward from there. And I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. This means I have to cut this plant. Well, first of all, I have to dig it up to see what the roots look like. And then I have to cut this plant. And I'm not looking forward to it. So I figured I'd go ahead and share with you what I like to do when it comes to propagating. And one of them is very similar to what I just mentioned with that Monstera deliciosa. In fact, that's how I propagate a lot of my Scindapsus, as you see down here. So my first preferred way of propagating plants is by putting roots in the ground. Just like my Monstera deliciosa did in my greenhouse, I prefer to put aerial roots downstream to the ground by either laying them down, we're using my Scindapsus as an example here, by either laying the plants down on the ground or by giving them a pot of soil to grow in. So some plants like the Monstera deliciosa, the Philodendron golden dragon, the lime fiddle, those guys have really long aerial roots. It'll work out really well if you give them a little pot with potting mix in it to grow their roots in. In cases of Scindapsus, I frequently alter between the two, so don't mind me. But in the case of Scindapsus, just again. What happens is, since a lot of them tend to crawl until they find something to climb up, I do that often. And you can see that both here with my Scindapsus platinum and my Scindapsus mayari. I use these little forks. They come in handy. So you lay your little vine down on your mix. Don't mind these. These are trees, seeds from one of my trees, and I'm trying to grow them out. That's why I put the pot underneath the tree. Cheating. Anyway, so you put your vine on the ground and it'll just crawl and root itself. And I'm trying to find a well-rooted Scindapsus mayari, and I would rather not pick out of this pot since I am developing, or I'm trying to develop one of these lines. There are 2 lines in here, but let me see if I could find one here in this platinum pot. Oh yeah, there it is. For this pot on top of this pillow, And let me show you what I'm referring to. Right here, you can see that I've got a whole bunch of vines, right? Whole bunch of vines. And they've got these little aerial roots, aerial root stubs right along the vine itself. And if you lay it down on some media, the roots will actually pop out. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have dirty fingers after this, but I wanted to show you guys. And that is exactly what happened to this line right here. So the aerial roots popped out. There you go, as you can see against my hand. The aerial roots popped out and went crazy and had fun. And that is the easiest way for me to propagate Scindapsus, is to lay it on the ground with those forks that I just showed you. I'm sure you could use bobby pins, maybe some plant twine or plant wire, which you could shape into little U's to hold it down in the soil. But just give it that stability and it will root. And when you do that, it's easy to propagate, because at that point, all you need to find are the areas that have those roots that grew in the ground, and just cut and take what you need. And there are a few rooted areas in this pot, which makes it easy to share plants when friends come over. Here's another one, which makes it easy to sell plants if you're into that thing. Scindapsus are doing pretty well price-wise in the plant game, so it would be a good plant to use this method on. There are some Scindapsus, however, that do really well with growing in moss, and I've got an example of my Mayari mother plant right here, and right about here, there it is, it's got an aerial root. So if you keep that moss moist, it'll do well. The roots will do the same thing that it does in these. For me, I live in a dry climate, almost desert-like climate, and here, this method works out better for me than the moss, just because moss dries up really, really fast in my area. So if you're in a similar place like I am, where it dries really fast, you might want to consider rooting or throwing those aerial roots in potting media or soil instead of moss. It's just harder to keep up with. Since I did mention moss, I would also like to mention that moss is my second preferred way of propagating plants. And I have a whole bunch of these little moss pots. Sorry for the cleavage. I have a whole bunch of these little moss pots. So some people put their propagations in cups. They just take cuttings, put them in cups, right? With some moss. And it takes well for them. They also put them in these big storage boxes. And it works great if you've got a lot of space. If you don't have a lot of space, these small containers, even food containers, food takeout containers, would work really well if you clean them up. And all you would need to do, really, is just make a cutting of a plant and stick it in there. So I've got a whole bunch of cuttings of a no-ID Scindapsus. As you can see, they're both growing really well. However, those aerial roots have yet to activate, and this is my problem with this particular Scindapsus. All of them grow out well. Hey guys, if you could just show, another one. If you could just show some root, that would be fantastic. No root, but some growth. Yeah, no root, but a little bit of growth. And here we go. Here we go. Yay. So as I was mentioning, some of them will grow into the moss, provided you keep a damp, warm environment. We don't want wet. Wet isn't good. So if you look at my box, it's quite dry on the sides. There's not a lot of, oh man, did I get dirt on my forehead? There's not a lot of moisture that hangs out, but if you feel the moss itself, it is moist. And you could also see the condensation on the top of the lid. That's when you know you're still okay. Now with this guy, this is a Scindapsus blue albo. So for me, I like to make sure that I have secondary roots come out. This is a nice sized root, and I would, and I have in the past, put this in its own pot to further its growth. However, I don't have potting media available, and I actually prefer some secondary roots come out just to make sure that it's extra stable. So for now, we're going to go ahead and put this guy back in here. We'll go ahead and let this sit a little bit longer. And I hope these other guys actually start doing their jobs and giving me roots. I mean, I'm not asking for grandbabies at this point. I'm just asking for roots. And there's that no ID Scindapsus I was telling you about. It's not a Triubii, and it's not a Scindapsus marahuyo, but it is a weird one, and it's quite nice. So, got those guys here in my moss, what is this? Moss takeaway bin. So my third preferred way of propagating plants is by water. Yeah, that thing that you drink when you're thirsty. You know, simple, water. Now, in my experience, not all plants take to water propagation. This variegated ZZ plant I found in my yard ripped off, and you could actually see how far it was ripped. All the way up here, poor stem. I didn't have time to do anything with it, and that was a few weeks ago. So what I did is I took some water, fresh water, plopped it in, and voila, we got some root. The only thing is you gotta remember to keep adding fresh water. If you live in places like the Philippines, open water may be a source of mosquito breeding grounds, and you don't want that. So definitely change out your water. I would probably say maybe a few days, maybe 5 to 7 days, and it'll be fine. It's just, it takes a while, but it's fine. Okay, I should probably make a note here and say that it does not apply to all plants. I don't think I've tried a philodendron in water. I don't think I have. I have tried Scindapsus in water. That didn't work out too well for me. So moss, it's got something to cling on, right? And so does potting mix. Water, Scindapsus has nothing to cling on. So that's not the most ideal way to propagate Scindapsus. Pothos, on the other hand, does super well in water. This is an Epipremnum aureum, I believe lemon lime. And check that out. So there is a dead petiole that fell in here. Let's take that guy out along with a dead leaf. This is not mine. This belongs to my mother-in-law. This is actually in her kitchen. But check out these roots. So each of these nodes activated their own roots, which is fantastic. Epipremnum aureum, or pothos, is so easy to grow in water. I mean, it's just such an easy plant. And yeah, check those roots out. It's just super long. So it can be transferred to its own pot at this point. But if you just want easy plants to take care of, an easy way to take care of plants, this is it. Don't forget to add more water or change the water. You're good to go. You're golden. Go on vacation. Your plant will be fine when you come back. And that is my preferred propagation method number 3, water. So my fourth preferred way of propagating plants is by offset. And a lot of my offset plants, I have a few of them here, are actually my water plants. When I say water plants, I don't mean plants that typically grow in water. I mean plants that I have growing in water. I do have anthuriums that provide offsets. I do not have any philodendrons that do. I haven't seen one yet. Nor do I have monsteras that provide offsets. So I'm referring to their babies. This is an Alocasia loco here in the Philippines. I cannot remember for the life of me its name in the United States, but I'll find it and I'll go ahead and flash it at the bottom of the screen. This is a Alocasia stingray, and isn't cute? Definitely looks like a stingray. This is a Caladium Schomburgkii, and as you can see here, I've got 1, 2, 3 offsets already. Quite a beautiful plant, very pretty variegation. This is the variegated version of the Caladium Schomburgkii. All you would simply need to do with one of these guys is just remove the offset. And let me put these guys back so I could demonstrate really quick what I'm talking about. So if you look in here, Alocasias also have these things called corms. And it's this little thing right here. I don't know if you can see it. And with corms, these are where the Alocasias grow from. In fact, I'll zoom in on this, but you could see Alocasia, little baby Alocasia, sprouting from this little thing right here. So we're going to go ahead and leave this in here and put it back in its water later. But a lot of these corms are actually connected to the mother plant, and that's why I would consider this an offset as well. And I have a sprouted corm right here, and I'm trying to find its connection to the mother plant so you can see what I'm referring to. Okay, can't find it anymore, it's gone. But this little offset right here of this stingray grew from the corm, and now it has its own little roots and its own little plant. And that's an easy way to propagate your plants, is by offset. In fact, if you look over here at this pot, that's how I got this Aslanii, was through a propagation by offset. By the time I find these guys, they're normally grown in their mother plants pots, and I just remove them from their mother plants. Same thing with this guy, quite beautiful. Look at the stem, just really pretty. And I've got a little baby Schomburgkii that I had to try out to propagate myself, and sure enough, easy peasy, guys. It's that simple. So not all plants that are available through offset are wet plants like alocasias or colocasias or caladiums. Some of them prefer dry. Now anthuriums prefer to be on the drier side. Yes, that's true compared to alocasias, but they're not as dry as these guys. And this is a tillandsia. This is a tillandsia. That is a tillandsia. So we've got offsets, babies, right? And most of the time I don't like removing the offsets because they're so cute. I mean, check this out. When it's a clump, it looks fantastic, right? Just really, really cool. And look at this guy. When it's a clump, it just looks magnificent. And I mean, if you have like a bigger jar or shelf where you can put this guy on. So what this is this is the tillandsia's flower. Right before it provides pups or offsets, it will actually flower and then die eventually. But that's beside the point. We all die, right? Tillandsias do too. So it's a life cycle. Tillandsias grow. When they're beautiful and they want to have babies, they put out a flower. These flowers are quite spectacular. The first time I saw one of my tillandsias have flower, I was like, oh, this is so nice, this is great. And I contacted my air plant mentor. This is Marco at Xeriscape. And he's like, yeah, your plant's gonna die now. I'm like, what? I just got this, why is it gonna die? He laughed and he explained that it's not actually gonna die, but it's closer to death than, let's say, you know, a younger plant would be. So once the tillandsias have a flower, they give off pups. And the number of pups vary. So this guy, gosh, I want to say that this is a hybrid. I can't remember of who. I know it's Xerographica, and I can't remember who the other, Capitata maybe? It's a Xero Capitata hybrid. But yeah, very, very pretty guy. So that one has only one offset. The Ionantha I was holding on to earlier, this is another one that has, it's a hybrid also, but this one only has one offset as well. Very, very cute. Sometimes they have multiples. This guy, he's a mess. So what I normally keep as clumps are the air plants that look pleasing. You know, like this guy and this guy. This guy is a hot mess. I mean, we don't know which way they're coming from. And that's because we've got 1, 2, 3 right there inside, 4, oh my word. I think I have 4 pups in this poor plant. And for air plants, my rule of thumb normally is that it has to be about 1/3 of the size of its mother plant. And some of these are just bigger than that. Oh gosh, I've got 5 pups in here, guys. Okay, so stick with me. Pup number 1. I'll put it right here for now. And then we've got pup number 2. So all you would need to do is find the base and gently tug at it. And it doesn't hurt the plant, but it is difficult because you will lose some leaves. Plant number 2. And there's a fallen leaf like I told you. This is plant number 3. Expect a fallen leaf from here. Gosh, it's huge. It's huge. Poor mother plant. Up number 3 right here. And for times when it gets difficult to twist or just to remove, scissors are your friend. This is pup number 3. See how big this guy is compared to the mother plant? Man, yeah, a little rough for mother plant. And then number 4 looks tiny still. Number 5 is right over here, and he's a little itty bitty one too. But I'll go ahead and keep those 2 guys on for a little bit longer. Looks like they could use it anyway. And that is it. So mother plant is not as full as she used to be, but she's also not carrying the burden of having to raise these 3 freeloaders. With air plants, super easy. You don't have to do anything except separate them. That's it. However, I would not water them immediately upon separation. I would probably wait for the point where we separate them to dry up a little bit, to callus. Here, so I removed some of the dead leaves on the bottom. Don't have to, it's purely aesthetic, but I wanted to show the base. It's nice and firm. This is where we removed it from its mother plant. You may see some roots. The roots for tillandsias do not take up any water. They're there merely to stick to things because these guys are epiphytes, and they climb and they stick to things and they enjoy the weather up there. If you've got some really cool places to display them, I would definitely do that. Consider that done. I would probably put an ionantha here, to be honest, but this is the plant that we took apart today. So there we go, a little air plant. So there it is. That is the story about offsets, and they're pretty much fun. I like offsets. They're easy to deal with. All you need is time and maybe some scissors or X-Acto knives, just in case you need to make those really tight cuts. But other than that, super easy and super fulfilling because you have a ready-to-go plant immediately, right? Fantastic. And that is it. That is propagation method number 4, which is offset. Propagation method number 5 has been my go-to lately. And it's been my go-to because it's just been so reliable for me. I mean, I can't tell you. Is by Pafcal. So this guy, really nice, was much nicer. Used to be much nicer. But I had an emergency with this. He actually belonged to this. Yeah, this came from this. So if you have a closer look, I'll go ahead and zoom in. This was actually the part where this was connected. So it used to be like that. And it had got a lot more leaves. I'll show you a picture of what both cuttings look like. And it was an accidental cutting. It actually fell from my shelf. I didn't need to do anything to the mother plant because it was still in the pot, surprisingly. And all I needed to do was watch the breakage point just to make sure that there wasn't going to be any rot. There isn't rot. I have a nice little plant right there, beautiful back, rubro juvenile, I believe is what it's called. And I have another growth point right here at the bottom. So I'm not worried about mother plant. Now, these leaves were quite huge. I think I've gotten a few leaves since I put it in Pafcal, but some of the older leaves look rough. You could see some yellowing, and that was when it fell. It had no roots. It had no roots whatsoever. And I was just panicking, and I'm like, oh no. If there's any Hail Mary substance or potting mix that I would use for plants that desperately need the help, it would be Pafcal. So from no roots to this. I don't know if you could see it, but check that out. Yeah. That's my story about Pafcal. Super easy to use. So all you need to do with that guy is moisten it and put your plant in it, and you're done. And I have this as proof of that. Because Pafcal is pricey and hard to find, I mean, I think we bought our first pack from Malaysia, and then we bought our second pack from Japan, and then we were gifted our third packs. So I should say packs, sets, because it is hard to find. Because it is harder to find, we tend to mix some media with this. And in this one, I actually have Pafcal mixed with pumice, and it works out really well. I have a Golden Dragon narrow form that's in Pafcal, pumice, and LAKEY. So anything to help the, I guess, Pafcal retain some airiness works out well. As you can see, these guys were all cuttings. So these were all cuttings off of this plant right here. Yes. Now, I think there was only one part that was a top cutting and that had rooted in moss, like I mentioned to you guys earlier. Rooting in moss is super easy, but usually it doesn't take all of the nodes at the same time to root in moss. So that's when you have to cut them into individual nodes, and I can't pull anything out of here. So that's what this is. These are a whole bunch of individual nodes that were cut and placed in Pafcal, and now they're all rooted and waiting for me to put them in their own pots. But it's super easy, and like I mentioned earlier, in times of emergency propagation, it would be my go-to method, absolutely. And these are my 5 preferred methods of propagating, and they're super easy. If you have any questions or comments on how I do it, if we do something the same, if we do some things differently, let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, maybe you could give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and turn on that notification bell so that you get notified of my future episodes. If you prefer seeing me more than just once a week, you can check me out on Facebook. I'm there as Tasteful Nodes. If you just want to look at pretty pictures or pretty videos, check me out on Instagram. I'm there as Tasteful Nodes as well. Okay guys, until next time, sa uulitin, keep your nodes classy and tasteful. Bye.